Well, let's watch Walter pound his meat.
I'm just imagining it's your face.
Oh, isn't he nice? I think we're having schnitzel. Either that or pulverized pork.
Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and this is my weekly vlog number 105 for February the 11th, 2019. Only a few days away from Valentine's Day. Bah humbug. And you might wonder about the teaser this week. Well, Walter was making schnitzel. That's why he was pounding the meat. Yeah, that kind of sounds rude. And I know that. Okay, moving on. Nothing really to show you at the moment. Just a little bit about the quilt class. Yeah, it's become a real challenge. I am far behind in the class, although I'm not the only one. And the one thing that's pulling me or putting me behind is the one quilt that's the art quilt. And the art quilt's the one that I told you it has about 400 and some odd pieces in it, and it's all done by paper piecing. Well, on the weekend, I thought I'd get ahead of the game, and I did. I really concentrated on that quite a bit, but I had to do a lot of ripping out. Seems to be the story of my life. I rip things out all the time. Anyways, it just wasn't fitting together properly. There's some angles you got to play around with, and I wasn't really sure when I first started how to piece it because the instructions that came with the pattern are pretty vague. So I think I figured out what the procedure is, but I had to do some ripping out before I got there. So that took most of Saturday morning. And into the afternoon, and yesterday I continued working on it, and I've got about, well, they're large segments that you make that are made up of little sub-segments. So out of the large segments I have left, I have, let's see, I'm at 30, piece 30, so I've got about 15 more pieces to go. I think it goes up to piece 45, and then those little pieces all get sewn together into larger pieces, and then all the larger pieces get sewn in together to create the quilt. So far I think it's looking pretty good. As I said, it's been quite a challenge. The other two quilts, well, one of them isn't that big a challenge, it's just time consuming, and that's the log cabin redo. And well, if I get it done by the time the classes are over, which I don't think I will, fine. I'm not going to push myself for it. After all, this is a hobby. It's supposed to be enjoyable. Don't put yourself through stress over something that's supposed to be relaxing. And it is relaxing. So I figure in a few weeks' time we're going off to the 4-day retreat. I can maybe finish up or get a good way into, depending on how much I have left to do, into those quilts then as well. So anyways, that's about all I can think of right now to show you. So let's move into the channel of the week, and this is by someone who's been on YouTube channels for a long time, is Lorrie Nunemaker. This week's YouTube channel is by Lorrie Nunemaker. You spell Lorrie L-O-R-R-I-E and Nunemaker N-U-N-E-M-A-K-E-R. And on this particular YouTube channel, you're going to find a variety of creative ideas and techniques to try. She focuses a lot on using the Cricut system for creating art and other products, but she also branches out into the world of sewing and other paper crafts as well. Her videos are very professional, they're very clear, and I think there's something there for everyone. So check out Lorrie Nunemaker. So as always, the link to Lorrie's YouTube channel is listed below, as are the listings for Stephen and Walter Live, this week's, and The Idiot Quilter. I have a new episode up of The Idiot Quilter, episode 37, which is project updates, and I show you in a little bit more detail those quilts that I'm working on and some other things that I've been doing. And of course the book of the week, and we'll come to that in a few minutes. Just a reminder, we haven't done this in quite a while, but you know I always put it in the show notes if you read the show notes. persons of interest. I'm always looking for people to send me something about themselves, about their art, whatever that is. It can be anything from the world of textiles to, you know, drawings on tin cans. It's all art. And, you know, just so we get to know you a little better. I've had a few in the past, as you know, but don't be shy. Send me an email. The email address is at the end of this video, but it's Stephen Bland, all one word, Stephen with a V, at sympatico.ca, sympatico.ca. And I'd be more than happy to feature you on here. It's not a scary thing, but everybody deserves their 15 minutes of fame, even if it is on my channel. Okay, so maybe it's more like about 2 minutes of fame, but you know, whatever. So feel free to send me something. Okay, so what's pissing me off this week? Nothing. I'm sorry. It's been a happy week. It's been a busy week, but really nothing is getting my goat. I mean, I did talk a little bit about comparison about, you know, service representatives that you use chat mode on the internet for. But we discussed that yesterday on Stephen and Walter Live, and if you're interested in that discussion, you know, links below, just click on that. But really, I have nothing to complain about. I could complain about the weather, but it's Canada. It's cold. We have snow, we have ice, then we have rain, then we have some more snow and some more ice. Big deal. Can't do anything about the weather. Can't really complain about my mother. She's doing well. She seems to have settled in now, and that's good, and I've sort of settled into that routine. Can't complain about my doctor, who's put me on a new blood pressure pill because the other ones didn't seem to be having effect. These ones do seem to have an effect, so that's okay. Yeah, I've got nothing. So let's move on. So let's talk about a product I mentioned about a week ago called the moldable foam blocks. These are simply what they're called. They are little blue foam blocks that you can lay them into a stencil or lay them on something that's got dimension to it or whatever, and it'll pick up that design. Then you can use them like a rubber stamp or whatever. And I've had a lot of fun with these. So I told you I would show them to you as soon as I got them. Well, I got them over a week ago, but I used them at the last art journal class that I was teaching. And well, everybody just fell in love with these. So the group decided they would get together, order a couple of packages, because there's about 8 in a package, and divide them up amongst themselves. And yeah, and they're reasonably priced at like about $11 to $13 Canadian. It depends. Amazon's prices fluctuate all the time, and they do that on purpose if you didn't know that. But so I made a short video showing how to use them. So last week I told you about a new product that I had ordered, but I haven't yet tried. Well, I got it. It's called moldable foam blocks. And that's exactly what they are. They're just little foam, hard foam blocks. They come in a package of 8. They're very inexpensive. I bought these on Amazon.ca and they cost me about $12. And I got free shipping because I have Prime. But the whole idea of these is that you can press these, you heat them up, press them into a stencil or an impression plate or a rubber stamp or any 3D objects, and you can use them like a stamp with acrylic paint, inks, watercolors, whatever. So I thought I'd show you very quickly how these can be used, but there are many ways you can use these as well. So the first thing to do is to heat them up and then press them into whatever it is you're trying to make an impression from. So I've got a piece of cardstock here, and I've pulled out a couple of things. One is an impression plate. I usually use this with jelly plate printing, and it's just got a design on it, and it's you know, debossed or embossed, depends on which side you use, I guess. And then a simple little stencil of some, looks like dragonflies. So I'm going to try the stencil first. Now, I have played with this in my art journaling class, and it worked really well. So what you do is you heat up this block. Now, you just use your heat gun, and it says to heat it up for about 30 seconds, but keep the heat circulating, because you don't want to melt it in one spot, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're melting this. So I'm just going over this. And as it said, it takes about 30 seconds or so. You can kind of tell when it's pliable enough, because if you stick your finger in it, it's going to make an impression. There is a little bit of a smell that comes off of this, and it smells like basically melting rubber. So I don't suggest you breathe it in. It's not that heavy, but you know, probably not a good idea to breathe too much of it in if you can avoid it. Okay, that's more than 30 seconds. Okay, I've got my stencil here. I'm just going to turn it over and press it firmly. I'm putting some pressure on this, and I'm holding it down, and just hold it down for maybe about 10 seconds or so. Make sure you press firmly on it. Some stencils work better than others. I haven't tried this stencil before, so we'll see. And there you go. You see my image? Now, it's not that raised, but it's probably enough. I'm trying to get the glare off it, so right there. You see it? There they are. So now let's take some oxide inks, because I happen to have them out. Doesn't matter what color. Here we go, Lucky Clover. We'll try that. And you just ink it up like you would any rubber stamp. And stamp it. Give it a good press. Hold it down for a few seconds to get that ink to absorb. And let's see what we've got. And bingo! Now, since my stencil isn't that deep, I'm getting color from the background as well, which you may like or you may not like. So you'd have to experiment with the depth of your stencil or whatever if you don't like that in the background. But I'm looking at these more or less not to give me a really good stamp impression as much as for creating quick backgrounds in my art journal. So that works really well. Let's grab another block, and for the sake of this, I'm just going to switch colors out. I'm going to use this time, this impression plate. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to heat up my block. Now, I have not tried this yet with an impression plate. I have tried it though with rubber stamps, background rubber stamps, and it worked really well with those. And of course, any 3D type of objects, you can create an impression. These would be great on a jelly plate. You can use acrylic paint with them, no problem. What I did was I just put some out on my non-stick craft mat, used my brush, and just brushed lightly over the impression that was in the stamp and pressed. And in fact, you can get several impressions that are fairly good from one dose of acrylic paint. Okay. I think I'm there. Again, I'm just pressing it into the plate. I'm giving it good firm pressure, holding it here for about 10 seconds. Let's see what we have. Okay, so you can see that. So now let's apply some ink to that. This time I'm using Faded Jeans oxide ink. There we go. Gave me a fairly good impression. Now you see I have a little less in the background than I did with this one because these are a little deeper. So try this with watercolors. Try it with watercolor crayons. I tried both of those. Those worked really well. Also, something that's really cool was I took some of my watercolor pencils and just laid them down. Well, actually, let me show you what that might look like. And not with the watercolor pencils, but with the oxide inks, if you want a really mottled background. So, first of all, how do you clean these up? Easy. going to grab a baby wipe. And I'm going to take my heat gun again. Actually, I'm going to wipe it off first, get the excess ink off. You may stain them a little bit, especially when you're using acrylic paints, but that doesn't hurt them. So once you've got it reasonably clean, take your heat gun, do the same thing again. Heat it up. And depending on how deep your impression is, as you heat it, you're going to see that the impression will slowly disappear. But if you don't want to wait for that and you don't want to heat it for that long, you don't have to. Just get it warm enough to start with. Press it into a flat surface. Give it a good press. And for the most part, your impression's gone. Now I can still feel that slightly raised, so I'll just heat it a little bit more. And actually I'm seeing it disappear right now, so the shallower the impression, the easier it'll be to flatten out. And there we go. Perfectly smooth surface again. So what I want to try now is I'm just going to take a couple of these colors of oxide inks, and I'm going to do the Tim Holtz method of just laying down color on my nonstick mat. And then I'm going to get out my water bottle, and I'm just going to lightly spritz it. And now I'm going to flip this over so I have this side to work with. I'm going to take my sponge. I'm not going to put any impressions on it. I'm just going to dip it in and stamp with it. So in a sense, I'm using it like a sponge, but it creates a really cool mottled background. And then you can just take your heat gun to it, just like you would if you were doing this in the more conventional way with the oxide inks or whatever inks you're using. And so you see I'm getting a nice background on this. Let's add a little bit more color. Let's just try. So you can build up layers. That's what I'm doing here. Just grab my water bottle. And the more layers I put on it, the darker I'm going to get the background. But I think you get the point from just that. Now another thing that I tried to do with these is I simply took watercolor crayons and I scribbled lines of color onto the sponge. I lightly spritzed it with the water, with my spray, and did the same thing I just did here. And you got a really neat background as well from that. So there's a lot of things you can do with these. And the beauty of them is they're cheap and they are reusable. As I said, you get 8 in a box, in a package, for about $12 Canadian. So I think they're cool, and I think there's a lot of other things I can do with them later as well. So I thought I'd show you that.
So I think they are kind of fun, kind of unique, and you can get a lot of interesting background effects with them. So yeah, it was worth the investment as far as I'm concerned, and it wasn't much of an investment. Okay, moving on, have some coffee. Yes, I did mention a few weeks ago that I was off coffee. Well, I was off it for about a month, and I did notice that I had less heartburn. So I think I was drinking too much coffee, but now I've decided that every now and then I can have a cup. I think 12,000 cups is maybe extending it a little bit, you know, pushing it. So
Book of the week. Now, I'm going to apologize before I show this to you. Lately, I've been showing you some books and magazines that I've had in my stash for years and are either no longer available or are difficult to get, or you can get them, but they're very pricey. Sorry about that. But I did mention last week in the vlog that your library is a good source. Now, you might not be able to get these specific ones that I'm showing you at all libraries, but it doesn't hurt to look. And, you know, it's free in a library, and you see something in it, leaf through it, you get some ideas, photocopy it. You know, I should take my own advice and do that one day. I haven't darkened the doors of my local library in years. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. I think that's thanks to the internet. You know, we can get everything at our fingertips at our computer. But yeah, I should go back and revisit my library. Maybe I could do a video of that. There's a thought. Put that down in my notes. Okay, here's the book. It is part of a series called the Easy Does It series. This is book number 8, Many Memory Albums. And this is essentially a very short, you can see it's very thin, a short little guide on how to put together various styles of mini albums or journals. And inside, it explains very clearly the equipment you'll probably need to do some of these projects. Lots of color pictures of various journals and albums, and very clear written instructions with all the material list and the whole bit. Now, I don't think I've ever made one specifically from this book. I think what I've done is I use this book more as a guide and for inspiration, and I look through and I see something like this tin. I did do one of these ones. Have no idea what I do with it afterwards, but the little booklet that goes inside, it's kind of cute. So if you're looking for like a handmade gift of some sort, that might be a really cute idea. And there's other albums in here too. Now, this is by a company called, where was it? I saw it here. I don't know if I can pronounce it. Kalmbach. K-A-L-M-B-A-C-H. I did find it on, let's see, I'm looking here in my notes. Yeah, I found it on Amazon.ca. They want $26.49 for it. It was listed originally at $7.95 US, so about $9 Canadian in today's terms. So that's pretty pricey. And then I looked in used, and oh my goodness, this is the first time where I've seen a used book was way more expensive than a new one for this. They wanted something like 40 or 50 bucks for this. So, you know, you got to know your prices on these things. I would not pay that for it. And quite frankly, I don't think I'd pay $26.49 for this, because it's really only, it's more like a leaflet. It's got 15 pages in it. That's it. So, you know, but sometimes you can find books like this that were maybe part of a series that people could purchase into on a subscription plan or something like that. Sometimes, if you look in your used bookstore, or you look in your local charity store that has books and stuff and leaf through the craft section, you might find something like this too. And that's another good resource if you're looking for craft books and you don't want to spend an arm and a leg. I often look through the ones that are in Value Village. Value Village is a big charity place that takes, you know, used clothing and books and kitchen appliances and things like that and resells them. I think they make money for the Diabetic Association here in Ontario. So I have checked through there before, and I have made some purchases because I have found some really good books about crafting at like a ridiculously cheap price, and they're usually in good shape. So that's another resource where you can go and you can look for craft books if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money online or in a bookstore somewhere. I find bookstores, as an aside here, I find bookstores very, have a sad lack of crafting books. The ones that they seem to sell, at least in Chapters or Indigo, which are both the same company here in Canada, probably our biggest book outlet, they usually have a very small section, and most of the books are pricey, and a lot of them are, well, they're not really worth the money. They're, you know, they're made by somebody who's got a big name or something like that out there. So, you know, I mean, that's not to say not to check that out, because you might find something. I mean, I have found some things that have been very good and not too bad for price. But that's another area where you might be able to find things as well. So anyways, many mini memory albums, and I've put the link to the Amazon pricing and that down below. And remember, I talk in Canadian dollars, so it's amazon.ca. You might find it for a more reasonable price on amazon.com if you're in the United States. Okay, so moving on, I'm talking about scrapbooking albums. This week, I've done a short little video showing you what I call unconventional albums that I've used for scrapbooking. You know, break away from the commercially made binders with the page protectors and try something new. So here's my clip about that. So now let's take a look at some unconventional scrapbooks. These are books that I decided to do mostly about travel, but I decided to break away from using the traditional 12 by 12 album format with the page protectors, the whole bit. So one of the first ones I did was back in 2014 after we'd been to Fort Lauderdale. This got a little bent up. I created this little album. I had recently gotten myself a cinch, which is a bookbinding system, and I put this together. It's a little rough for the wear here. So basically, I did what I would do on most scrapbooking pages, although this is sort of a blend between digital elements and more conventional stick-on kind of elements. So you can see here, like the stars are just from a stickers package. Same with this here, but the pictures I printed out using my printer, and I also did some pages digitally. So it's a kind of a mix. My idea about doing this kind of thing was to make a very quick little album that could be put on a coffee table or something, and people might casually browse through it if they're bored at one of my parties, for example. There isn't anything particularly exciting about this, but the one thing is I did most of this, the layout of the pages, the digital pages, I did these on my iPad while I was in Fort Lauderdale on vacation. So all I had to do when I came home was basically print them out, and my album was done. At least that's what I thought. I'd give it a try. Now, there are some pros and cons to that. It depends on the software that you are using. This is coming out. It also depends how busy you are on your holidays, whether you want to do something like that. But one of the pros of doing this is your album's done, or pretty much done, with the exception of the printing when you come home. Similarly, I bought this album because I liked it. It already came with all of these embellishments on the cover, so I didn't have to do anything more here. It says travel. And this was a trip we took in 2006, so a little bit before that other one, to Quebec. And here it's all done digitally. This album came with these little page protectors already inserted. So again, I just created my pages digitally, and you'll see there's not a lot of journaling happening in this. It was a very quick album to put together. If you don't journal, your albums can be very quick. Why didn't I journal? Because I don't like journaling. To be frank about it, I don't. I should do more journaling, but I didn't in this one. But I had been to Quebec City and Montreal and that many times in the past, so there wasn't anything really new and special I needed to say about any of this. So you can see the whole thing is done digitally. And again, the idea here was this could sit on a coffee table and people at their leisure could browse through it. Then in 2000, when was this? I think this is the second book. I have 2 volumes of this. This was a trip we made. No, this is book 1. That's what's said. We made 2 trips or a trip to London, England, and I had found this particular album in a stationery store in London, and I thought this would be great as a scrapbook album for this trip because it has all the stops on the tube. I used my Cricut Maker to cut out this little detail here and the title. And in this I have a little bit more journaling at the beginning. Now, I'm going back to my roots with this one. I did not do as much digital this time. I decided I was getting tired of doing digital. I wanted to do something more with my Cricut Maker. So I used my Cricut Maker to cut out a lot of these background pages. I did use the printer, of course, my computer, to print out my pictures. But you can see it's a little bit more sophisticated. I've got some inserts in here. This is kind of cool, a little pop-up of St. Paul's. And when I was working on this, I wanted to do something that was a little bit more elegant, I guess, than some of my other ones. And again, I really focused on using titles. Again, I was using my Cricut Maker to cut those out. Now there is some journaling here, a little bit more here, and as you can see, I've got some little 3D embellishments. Now these I bought when I was in London, England, and that's why I want to include them on the page. So when I travel now, I think about what I'm going to do with my pictures when I get home, and whether or not they're going to go into an album or into some other format. And I try to pick up little embellishments that may not be actually intended for scrapbooking, but that I can use on my pages, and they come from wherever I was traveling to. This, for example, was a little button, a pin on the back of it, but I took the pin off and glued it in here. And as I said, this particular album is in 2 volumes. In fact, I believe at the time I changed the binding on it. Yes, I must have, because I think the binding that was originally on this was not going to work very well for this type of album. I needed something a little bigger, so I used my cinch to put the spiral binding onto this. And that is my enclosure. And you might wonder where I got this. This is just some elasticized gold, what would you call it? Rope? String? This particular album, I did specifically buy this style. Now this style is actually a Project Life album. Now in my next segment to this, I am going to talk about Project Life scrapbooking because it's a little bit different format. But this gives you sort of a preview of that kind of thing. So in this album, this was from Australia. This was in 2017. And here I use the format of Project Life. Now, as I said, in a future video I will talk more about Project Life because it is a little different. The one thing I was liking about Project Life at the time was, if you think back to what I said about the album that I did while I was in Fort Lauderdale using an app on my iPad, I did this one with an app, the Project Life app, on my iPhone. So every day after we'd been out, I would organize the pictures electronically on my phone, and when I came home, I just needed to print these out. And this was the size that they were formatted to. So you can see I've got a lot of pictures, and that's one of the beauties of Project Life. You can get a lot of pictures in a small space, and you can get different sizes. I can also do my headings on specialty cards using the computer. So essentially, this entire album in Project Life style was done by the Project Life, or with the Project Life app on my phone. So all I had to do when I came home was print these out and put them in the album. And you can see this is a fairly extensive album. Lots and lots of pictures. I did throw in here and there some 3D embellishments. But essentially it's all digital, but in the Project Life format. Now, let's continue talking a little bit about Project Life. As I said, I will talk about it more extensively in my next video. But this is a planner for Project Life. And, well, it's not actually a planner. It's one of their albums. But I did this as sort of a daily or weekly kind of scrapbook album. These pages already came in this size. I just took pictures with my camera, printed them out, and dropped them in. So you'll see I use my label maker in this case because these are more casual kind of moments. You know, like looking for furniture kind of a thing. Flowers in the garden. There were some pieces of journaling, but not a lot. It was just what was ever happening on the particular day or week. And basically these pages came from my day planner, where I was trying to do a Project Life day planner where you have your usual calendar for writing in events for the day, but you have other pages where you can stick in cards with pictures on them or things like that. So what I did was, at the end of the year, I removed all the agenda pages and just kept the pages that I had put pictures in or made notes on, this kind of thing. This is one I inserted just in there. It was just a way of sort of doing a weekly type of, you know, a day in the life type of scrapbook. And that was kind of fun to do. And I have a little printer. It's called the Selfie. And it allows me to print wirelessly this size of pictures with no problem. So that's what I did. So that's another kind of unique album. And I did the cover myself on here. I put this background paper onto it, and I cut out some of these little tags, and I did some of these little flowers and things on a doily just to fancy it up. Now this is an album I have never used, but I had a lot of fun creating it. And this sort of ties into the album making process that I've been showing on my vlogs over the last few weeks. But I thought I would show this to you very quickly. This is a Heartfelt Creations album. The one that I am making right now in the vlog is from a company called iCraft. The Heartfelt Creations albums are really nice. They're very substantial. This one I was going to start using as a family tree album, and that's why there's some loose pictures in here, because I've never gotten to them all. I didn't get it finished, never went back to it, but I've got little inserts and all kinds of things. This took quite a while to make, but you can see how fancy it is, and I enjoyed making it. There's a lot of magnets on some of these pockets, things that pull out, things like that. But I think after I made it, and even though I started to put pictures and things in it, I didn't want to dirty it up with pictures, basically. I just like the album itself. And as I said, it's a very heavy album. It's very thick, but it was a lot of fun to make. So again, you don't have to put your scrapbooking in 12 by 12 albums. You can think outside the box and try other formats to create a scrapbook, because essentially a scrapbook can be anything that you want. So next time I'm going to show you the Project Life system.
So next week I will continue in my series about my evolution of scrapbooking and move to the very trendy and very popular, not so sure how trendy and popular it is anymore, but the system called Project Life by Becky Higgins. So we'll talk about that next week, and I'll show you what I've done with it. I was all about that at one point in time. Okay, so moving on to my album creation series, I have another installment where I show you how I created inserts for the album.
So now that we've got the basic construction of the album done, it's time to put in some inserts so there's more space for pictures or for journaling or for whatever. So I've done some of this already, so I thought I'd show you what I've done. Remember the pockets that we put into the side last time? Well, this time I made a couple of cards that could be used either for pictures or journaling, or both, because you have a back side and you have a front side. I could have put a ribbon at the top of each of these as a pull-out, but instead I decided to use some more of the elements that are right in the paper pack itself, and so I cut out these little squares that were already included with the paper collection, and I have inked around the edges, and I did the same with the cards, and the cards came from the collection as well. They're what they call cutaways or cut-aparts, and I just attached two of these to each card, a front and a back, because the back side of one of these probably looks like the paper, which you could leave, but because these you'll be flipping through the booklet, I thought it might be nice to see something on both sides. Now I did have to trim these down a little bit to get them to fit properly into my pocket so that when the album is closed, these are not sticking out. And sometimes you have to wiggle around to get the right placement, because remember we have those little flaps underneath here that are stuck down. Well, they might catch on the corners of your cards, but it's no big deal, you can get them in. There we go. So we just see the tops of them peeking out, and when the album is closed up, they're protected. Now, how did I put those in? Well, I'll show you. So let's find another page that might be appropriate for this. So here's my other pocket page right here. And I'll show you what I've cut out. So I have these two large cards, and you see I trimmed off the bottom a little bit. I have inked these all the way around the outside. And why do I do that? Well, one, it gives it a bit of a shadow effect, but you're going to say, but these already have a dark border, so that's not going to show up. Well, you're right. But when you cut them, you will get a white edge sometimes when you cut the cutaways from the scrapbooking paper. So it just covers up that stark whiteness of the edges by doing that. And I've already pre-cut 4 of these little, I don't know what you want to call them, medallions or little squares. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach 2 of these to each of these cards, a front and a back. So let's take these 2. And the way I'm going to do this is very simple. You could glue them, you could even staple them, especially if you've got some colored staples. That might look really nice and it's fast. But I'm just going to use my 2-sided tape for this. Make sure I've got the top there. I'm going to put just a small piece down at the bottom here to secure it. And on the other side, on this one that's going to go on the back, I'm just going to put another piece across the center, and this will hold my 2 pieces together. So we'll take off the protective tape on this one first of all. And I'm just going to eyeball it and put it about halfway down. It's up to you how far you want to go down. Again, keeping in mind you want them to only stick out part way from the book. Now you might want them to stick out beyond the cover of the book itself too, which would look very nice. The reason I'm not doing it is because this gets in the way, but it depends on your closure. And now I'm just going to flip it over, and on this side, make sure I've got it face up. I'm just going to line it up with the other one and stick it down. And now I have a pull tab, and this is going to go right in this pocket here. If I can manipulate things, there we go. Okay, so there's one. Let's do the other one. So the same thing. Some double-sided tape here, varnish it, another piece here, varnish it, and where's my pokey tool? There it is. Pull off the protective backings, and here at about halfway down, and put on the back. And there we have our second card. So as I said, this now gives us more real estate for pictures or journaling or whatever. And it looks kind of nice too. If you see, now we have these little tabs on the side as well, so that adds an embellishment feature as well. Now at the front of the book, you remember we put this smaller pocket, and so what I've done here is, again, using some of those cut parts, I just punched a hole in them and attached a piece of ribbon, and they fit right here in this little pocket. And again, pictures could go on them, journaling, whatever. So let's take a look at how I made those. Not too difficult. We'll go to the back page here. I have one of my cards here and the other one here. Now I've already pre-punched the holes in these, and so all I need to do is take my ribbon. This one's a little thicker ribbon, and you got to maybe scrunch it down to get it through your hole, depending on how big the hole actually is. And I just pull it through. You could tie a bow. I'm not going to do that. I just pull it through, loop it around, and carefully, so I don't rip the card, tighten it up. And then I just take my scissors and I trim the ends off at a bit of an angle. And so there's one card done. It's a very fast process. And the second card, I'm using a little thinner ribbon. And you can use whatever color you'd like. You know, if you want to coordinate with your paper or the cards themselves, that's fine. It just gives people who might use this album something to grab a hold of to pull out. And again, it adds a nice decorative element. So there we have it. And there we go. Now I think that's a little long, that one, so I'm just going to shorten that because I don't want the ribbons. You could have the ribbons hanging out outside of your binding or outside of your album, no problem. So there you go. Now the last element, just let me clear some space here, that I want to show you is this little flip-up insert. And this was very easy to make. Now the kit came with pre-cut ones like this, but of course I had put this into my Cricut Maker and I cut them out of the actual paper collection that I'm using. And the idea behind these is, again, this could be for pictures or journaling, or pictures and journaling, whatever you would like. So it just extends your real estate. So how did I make these? Well, let me put this to another page. I think I'm going to put another one right here. And I've already pre-cut my paper. And these have been scored along here. I had my machine do that. So I'm just going to fold the score lines and varnish them with my bone folder. Now I want one, these were both cut from the same type of paper. So I want one this way and I want one the other way. So I want my hinges to go on the inside. So I fold them appropriately. And I think I'll have this one on top. So all you do now is put some two-sided tape or glue. I'll use the 1/4 inch, I think, for this, along the hinge. I'll do that to this one as well. Varnish them again. As I said, varnishing is important because it makes sure that you've got good adhesion between your double-sided tape and the cardstock. And we'll peel off the back of this one. Now this one's going in first because I want this side to face up. It's a personal choice. So you just eyeball it, try to center it, little ways down from the top. And we'll take the tape off this, or backing off this tape. And the same thing, I'm going to put it on top, but I'm going to try to line it up and make it as straight as I possibly could. You could stagger them vertically if you wished. There we go. And so there, we have another insert. Now I could keep going. I could put as many in here as I would like. I could put another set down here below. I could stagger these. It's all up to you. It's your design. So now we've got some inserts, we've got some journaling space and some extra spaces for pictures. So the next thing we're going to look at is doing some more finer embellishing of each of the pages. Okay, so next week we'll take a look at the beginnings of embellishing the pages. And let me know if you're enjoying this series or not. I'm working ahead in the album, but the album isn't finished yet. I'm only like 1 week ahead of when you see the video. So anyways, I'm kind of enjoying the process. It's putting me back to my roots again in crafting, and I love making journals, and I haven't done that for a while. So this gives me an excuse to actually do that by presenting it as a series. And I think at the end of this particular album, what I might do is take each of those segments and string them together, edit them together, so that it becomes its own separate video for, you know, future reference, if people are interested in that kind of thing. So what's that take us to? Events in the past week. Well, I got my car serviced on Wednesday. I talked a little bit about that on Stephen and Walter Live. Nothing exciting there, except for the fact that I drove my car in an ice storm to get it to, like, how stupid am I? To get it to the dealership to have it serviced, I drove my car through an ice storm. But it's Canada, as I said before, and who knows? The weather changes here on a dime, and as Canadians, we're pretty much used to driving through bad weather. I mean, it's just what it is here. Mind you, the way some people were driving the other day in the ice storm, you thought that the roads were absolutely bare and it was the middle of July, because they were just peeling away. I guess they were relying upon their snow tires for that, but that's how accidents happen, I guess. But so nothing really exciting there about the car servicing. As I said, I went to my doctor. My doctor changed my medication for my blood pressure. I mean, she has me worried about my heart and my blood pressure. My other doctor never even mentioned those things. So I don't know, either he was a quack, I'd been going to him for like 30 years. 30, geez, more like 40. How old was that guy when he retired? Didn't look any different from the day that I first started going to him, and I started going to him when I was about 21. Wow. But anyways, he never seemed to be too concerned about my heart or my blood pressure, but this new doctor is very thorough, as I've said before, and she's very concerned, which makes me very anxious and worried. So anyways, this new medication, as I mentioned, seems to be working a little better than the other one. The side effect of the coughing, it has it too, but doesn't seem to be quite as pronounced. The other one, I would start coughing around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You could set your watch by it almost, and cough for a few minutes, and then that was over with. But that was one of the side effects. So this one doesn't seem to have that, and it does seem to be lowering at least my systolic. That's the top number. My bottom number, it's lowered it a little bit, but it's not in the range that my doctor wants it to be in. And I don't know if I should be worried about that. That's the dystolic. Anybody who knows anything about systolic and diastolic, you know, things, I don't know, is one the pressure of when the blood's pumped out, and when the other one's when the blood's pumped in? I don't know. I don't get it. But anyways, I'm still alive. Went to Quilting Guild on Tuesday night last week. They had this fabulous speaker there. She does thread painting, it's called, and her quilts were works of art. And she actually was a teacher and taught kids color theory and other things by having them make small quilts. And she was showing some of that, and I thought that was, you know, if I was still teaching and was into quilting, I would definitely employ quilting into the classroom. I used to do that with scrapbooking too, because it's a fun way to teach all kinds of different things. And being an English teacher, it's pretty much wide open how I can approach literature or that kind of thing. I mean, I think out of all the subjects you teach, with the exception of maybe art, English is probably the most creative of them all, because the boundaries are limitless when you teach that kind of thing, because it's so open to interpretation and that kind of thing. So, you know, but I'm a little biased about that, of course, being an English teacher or past English teacher. Okay, So Guild was really good. She showed all these things. And you know what was nice about the Guild too on Tuesday night was I knew more of the people thanks to the retreat that I had done 2 weeks ago. And people were coming up and talking to me and the whole bit. I felt more like now that I kind of belong in the Guild. I am seriously considering, they're looking for some more people for the executive. And they say it's not a strenuous task or anything like that. It's whatever they have. But I don't know. I might consider it. But I also don't want to be presumptuous because after all, I haven't been a member for a year yet. You know, and also I'm a man, and I don't want this to sound, you know, masochistic or whatever, but something happens, I have found, when a man enters what is more of a woman-dominated group or whatever. The dynamics change for some reason, and I don't know if it's necessarily always a good thing. And you know, these ladies work hard that are on the executive. This Guild's been around for a long time, so maybe I should just lay low for a little while longer until I get really into this. I mean, I can volunteer to help with some of the other things. They always have charity things for people to take home, do, and bring back. I haven't taken one of those. My first thing that I've done for them is for the boutique that they'll set up in November when they have the quilt show. And it was to make a simple little coffee cozy kind of thing. You know, one of those sleeves that goes around your coffee cup to keep your hands from burning off. And they had it all in a little kit. It was a little 5-minute project, basically. I took one under duress because that's a little bit different sewing skill than what I'm doing in quilting. Although I found out after I did it, it wasn't that much different. But I did one, and it turned out fine, no problem. It was pretty easy. So maybe I'll do that as well. Now, I don't know about piecing a quilt top together for them, or they have some other things where they've got batting, and I'm not sure exactly what those are. But they do something with those too. And all of these are like go towards charity groups and things like that. Oh yeah, I did do one thing around Christmas time. They wanted some placemats for Meals on Wheels. And so I did do a couple of placemats. But I had done placemats before I knew what I was doing. But, you know, I suppose you got to stick yourself out there, you know, and it's maybe a bit of a learning curve, but, you know, you do learn. So I should do that maybe a little bit more so I feel more part of the Guild, I guess. Okay, so what's coming up? Well, we have a class, Walter and I together, surprise, on this coming Saturday. It's 2 sessions, so next Saturday, this Saturday coming and the Saturday after that, and it's to make one of those rugs that everybody's like all gaga about, out of, you know, long strips of fabric, and it goes around and around. Sort of reminds you of one of those braided rugs. I guess this is very trendy, and as I've said before, I wasn't really interested in making one of those because I don't, after I make a rug like that, I really don't want anybody stepping on it. But Walter decided to take the class, and I thought, well, it might be fun if we both are in the same class because we haven't been in the same class before. Hopefully we won't kill each other. And so that's next Saturday. So in the meanwhile, we've both had to take our jelly roll, which is 2.5-inch strips, about 40 of them in the package, and we had to sew them end to end. And there's a special way you do that. So those of you that are non-quilters, you won't know what I'm talking about really, but let's just say there's a way to do that. So it's not just taking the 2 pieces of fabric and a straight line. It's kind of a diagonal thing and it opens up. Anyways, that was Walter's first foray into that. I've done this many times before because a binding for a quilt is done this way. And I showed him how to do it, and I think he finished up last night his strips. Mine are done. So we're ready to go. And we'll see how this all works out and what level of frustration this might be. Now, everybody I've talked to that's taken one of these classes before love it, absolutely love it. Say there's, you know, there's a bit of a learning curve at first to keep the rug flat. I guess as you start sewing it around and around and around, it starts to cup up like a bowl, but there's a way to avoid that. So I guess we'll learn that in the class. And who knows, I might enjoy it so much I might want to make like thousands of these things. Maybe, who knows. Okay, next week, Stephen and Walter Live will be on at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our usual time. However, we have not done this in a while, so we're going to attempt it this coming Sunday. We're going to do an art attack. And I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. Some people yesterday on Stephen and Walter Live mentioned doing cards. Walter's not really interested in doing cards, and quite frankly, neither am I. Card making isn't one of my things. I've done them, but I'm usually not in the mood to do a card. I'm thinking something with collage, and I just got a book from the charity shop of Norman Rockwell's paintings, and they're all in color. And I love Norman Rockwell's paintings because of the, the characters that are in them are, bigger than life kind of a thing. And I have done art journaling pages using some of those as my stimulus before. So I'm thinking that maybe that's what we'll do. But I'm debating whether we will do them as an art journal page. Now, Walter doesn't have an art journal, like as if there's any shortage around this house of art journals that he could use, not. Or do it as a small canvas. And I'm leaning towards the small canvas idea. So that's going to be next Sunday, Art Attack with Stephen and Walter Live. So I hope you can join in and watch this. I have no idea how this is going to work out, so it could be a real laugh and a half. And yes, we will be having champagne as we do it, or wine, whatever, because it just makes you more creative, doesn't it? Or at least you don't worry about mistakes until the next day when you sober up and you look at it and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? So that's what's coming up, and I think that's about it for me today. So I hope all of you have a really great week, and hopefully you'll be able to join us at 4 o'clock this coming Sunday for the Art Attack. And yeah, have a good one. See you later. Bye-bye.